What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Tactical Tortoise and a bit of an impromptu stream. We're not streaming any games right now, but we will have some more this afternoon. But we did just release these new maps for playtesting that might be used for the remainder of Season 1 of T5S2, at least until 9th edition comes out. And I wanted to give everyone a run through, maybe answer some questions, and kind of talk about the intention of these maps a little bit so that people can take that into consideration when they're playtesting them. All of these maps are now available on the Discord server in the public test realm channel. So you can just go there and you can get links to all of the Steam Workshop files, and you can subscribe to those to download them and add them automatically to your tabletop simulator. There are a couple known issues that people have brought up. Some of the particle effects for some people specifically don't load, and I'm not sure why that is right now, but I will try to get that worked out as soon as I can. And there's some of the widgets when you additively load onto the BCB map base may be a little funky, but I think we can fix those pretty easily. So you should see some updates over the next couple of days to these maps just to make them a little bit, just to work out some technical kinks. But other than that, this is what they're going to look like. Thanks, everybody, for joining in the chat. If anybody has any questions or any discussion about the maps in particular, let me know, or just anything, really. Honestly, I kind of just want this video to be here just to be able to reference to people when we're talking about these maps. And but if anybody has any particular comments, then we'd love to hear them and have a discussion. So there's 3 up on the public test realm right now, which is originally the plan was to do 6, and the original vision was to have the terrain role be decided by the defending player alongside the deployment zone role. So it would be very much like deployment zone, where you would roll 1 or 2 dice and pick one of them, or re-roll if you chose to defend. That would give the defending player a little bit more control over their over sort of their starting position, which I think it would be a good thing for the game, because you could pick it would remove as much opportunity for the first player to sort of unleash a devastating alpha strike, which ITC Ruin sometimes allows, depending on the deployment zone you get. And these maps were all designed to be very defensive on a certain deployment zone setup, so that you could try to force through the deployment zone that you particularly wanted. Because 9th edition's coming out, it is my opinion that big rules changes like that probably aren't going to be... I don't think we're going to be looking to make rules changes of that scale, because we just don't know what the rules are going to look like in 9th edition. It looks like the role for deployment zone will be removed in 9th ed, because the missions will have a deployment zone built into them. And what we'll most likely end up doing is building maps specific to each mission. So these maps would probably not be used, which is why we sort of didn't continue to work on them. But I know a lot of people are kind of voicing concerns about ITC Ruins, that it's either that it's boring or that it's unbalanced, and they don't like to play every game on it on that style of map. So we'll be trying to move towards something a little bit more interesting. And then one of the things we're trying to do, obviously, is theme the maps to be to increase the visual appeal of the game as well. One thing I'd like to do, and haven't just had time to figure out yet, is reskin that map base so that it's a little prettier. And then once you sort of load these maps, we've obviously gone kind of overboard on lighting and particle effects, maybe to their detriment, but I think they look good. They obviously sort of increase the immersion of the game quite a bit, and I think for people watching on stream, it's going to be a lot more interesting to look. So this is map number 1. We've called it Finite Gates. It's a little bit of play on words, because Gate of Infinity obviously is a pretty powerful ability in Warhammer, but there's only 2 gates in this one, so it's not an infinity gate. It's a finite number of them. And this one I designed specifically to build around the long table edge deployments. So that is, let me open up my... There we go. So that is Dawn of War and Frontline Assault, like this. And the reason for that is we have this enormous, huge portal, Stargate here, in the center that can block an enormous amount of line of sight to most of your army. you sort of have, for the most part, a pretty reasonable shadow zone from this piece of terrain that looks like this, where your opponent probably won't get any line of sight on your units from these angles, and then a lot of that is also blocked by these small corner L ruins on the sides here. So a lot of times it's going to look even narrower. It's going to look something like this. So it's enormously defensive from that standpoint. But the long table edges, obviously there are clean lines of sight throughout the entire thing and along the sides of the table edge as well, or the short table edges, I should say. So the short table edge deployments were meant to be a little bit more lethal, whereas the long table edge deployments, you could hide a lot of models from your army as well. One of the things that we have done for this is introduce the new terrain type, which is an obstruction. So you can see the tooltip here. Units can't be placed on top of obstructions. You get cover if you're within an inch of them, or if you're a vehicle or monster and touching it, and you are obscured by it. Just sort of basically normal. A lot of tournaments use either this terrain type or that cover rule for some terrain types like hills already as a house rule, and we've just added that in as well. So that allows you to deploy very defensively, but at the cost of limited mobility, because these aren't ruins. Only flyers can jump over, so your other units will have to move around. The center of the table is a little clustered with this big citadel ruin in the center as well, so especially for large vehicles and things, there's a bit of an impediment, and they might have to move around the sides. Again, the short table edges, like I mentioned, were meant to be a little bit more lethal, but we've added these ruins in the corner that can allow you to hide some of your large artillery and big models in the corners as well. And we'll see that on High Road as well. We also have some big ruins to do exactly that. So we have made some concessions to other deployment types, but the thrust of it is that we're trying to design each map around one particular deployment type. Again, these were designed potentially to have the deployment, the terrain determined before the deployment roll, both by the defending player. So the defending player would have more control over the terrain. If we might have to rejigger some stuff to make them a little bit more balanced if the terrain will be determined randomly, but that's a consideration that we'll make in the future if it's necessary. But anyway, that's this map here. Obviously, again, like I said, we're trying to theme things as much as possible. So, big old Necron Citadel with some of these active portal gates, I think would be cool. And I do have to give a shout out to a member of the Discord, Lockjaw, who's also another map creator from the TTS Discord server, who gave me a lot of tips on building these maps, and he actually created these portal pieces. The portals are a combination of several other assets, and he built them. He stapled them all together basically to build these cool portals, and I spruced them up a little bit, but for the most part that's his creation. So big shout out to Lockjaw. He's a cool dude. So that's this map. Pretty interesting one, and I think it'll create some interesting dynamics with the obstructions along these table edges to make movement a little bit more difficult than it is just sort of on a normal ITC ruins, but I think will create some interesting dynamics. The other thing is that the ruins, if you're on a long table edge deployment, one thing that can be problematic is a really hard-hitting alpha strike melee list. And you can block that out because the obstructions are impassable. If as long as they don't fly, and you can probably block their landing zone if they do fly. If you put your screens here, your opponent doesn't have an option to get in, and that's a new paradigm that obstructions create over just ruins, where they could just go through the ruin and it wouldn't matter. So there is a little bit of a detriment to sort of really alpha strikey melee forces, but it's not a great deal, and I believe that the amount of line of sight blocking is going to just generally be beneficial to them. Crepuscular, how do units look on it? Yeah, I guess we Shuma and I spent way too long. Let's spawn some boys in here. How's that? Spent way too long. How about some Deathwatch guys playing around with units on the map? We've actually lighted, not only the portals are lighted, but also the glowing parts on the ground are lighted as well. You can't really quite see it there, but there's a lot of lighting effects. This one's lighted, so you'll be able to see it glowing on that guy. There's a lot of lighting effects added onto the game. Eureka, I tried loading this map onto the map base, but the board kept glitching out. Yeah, so one thing I think that was something I mentioned before. It looks like there's a widget that is spawned by the map base that might have been broken at one point while this map was being built. So I think that should be easy to fix. So I should have that fixed this weekend. So yeah, I do apologize for that. Either that or it's a board height thing, and I'm not sure about that. But I think it's this widget problem. So that is that map. Let's go to the next one. So this is map number 1, finite gates, and we'll move over to the next one. There we go. So this is map 2, calling this one Black Glass. This one was originally going to be sort of a very gunline-centric map and ended up moving towards being focused on the short table edges. Since we decided to move things, or to move away from the defender determining the map as well as the deployment zone, I did actually rejigger it a little bit to make it a little bit more balanced for long table edge deployments as well. Specifically, these ruins were originally basically oriented like this, but they've been angled a little bit more so that they provide more coverage on long table edge deployments as well. But essentially, there's a big, huge, enormous sort of line of sight shadow created by these obstructions. So these pieces are obstructions, and these crumbly lava pieces are ruins. And if you look on them, they actually do have a base on them as well. So that's the actual base of the ruin for providing cover, and then the rest of it is going to block LOS. There were some comments that it is a little tough to tell which parts of them block LOS, and that is a solid criticism, and something I think we can fix by filling in sort of areas like this and this. It's not really drawing on them, but with pieces. The hope is that we can move away from the ITC rule, or at least having to have the ITC rule where first level ruins block line of sight, but it just by sort of physically blocking line of sight, because TTS lets us do anything. We don't have to make house rules about it. But it is because these are irregular ruins. There are some situations where you can draw a line of sight through little crevices and things like that, and that's something that we can easily repair. Chef Reese Vulcan lives. Yeah, this was we originally called this one Promethean Plains, but I think we're gonna go with Black Glass because it has all this cool obsidian texture on it, which I really like. I think it ended up looking very cool. One thing I do like also that it's a glossy texture on these obsidian pieces, so the lighting effects sparkle on them, which I think is super cool. Michael McDonald needs to play this map with my salamanders. I know, yeah, right? It's gonna be sick. It's going to be sick. I actually played a very cool game on AOWPI on an earlier version of this map over the week. That was Wednesday. So you can actually go check out that VOD at twitch.tv/AOWPI. And I played against Tau, but I was playing Deathwatch. And the Deathwatch army I had, it was really cool. I took some screenshots. They're actually in the Discord. The Deathwatch army that I had meshed, it camouflaged itself super well with the terrain because it was all black and red. And it actually looked very cool. They looked like they were prepared for the mission. It was pretty sick. But this map was designed effectively to hinder mobility a little bit. There are a lot of craters on it, obviously, so charging sort of out of deep strike is a little tough. All these broken earth pieces are considered craters, as well as these actual three-dimensional craters too. The ones that are not three-dimensional, and you can tell they don't have a tooltip on them, that says crater and that says nothing, they're just for show. They have cool little geysers in them, but that doesn't do anything mechanically. But again, this was originally designed for a short table edge deployment because if you are in Hammer and Anvil, your deployment zone sort of comes up basically like this, and so you have this huge section here where nothing can see you, and you can deploy forward elements. This line of sight is basically effectively the only sort of open sight line along the table. You have a little bit of sight through here, but you do have to be worried about moving through the center because you have to deal with this crater and you have to deal with this open line of sight as well. originally, the map had a little bit more line of sight blocking in the middle, and I actually ended up removing it because I think it became a little bit obtrusive. But that's definitely something that I could consider adding back in, depending on how the feedback goes. Originally, basically, I had the ruins block this line entirely, or the obstructions, excuse me. But I think it was a little bit too claustrophobic. So that is black glass, and you can also tell that since the ruins were rotated here, that you do have some very solid deployments on the long table edges as well, because you have, obviously these ruins will block your line of sight pretty significantly, and then this, while it's not as a big a deal as the big portals in finite gates, it does give you a little bit of line of sight blocking, but because they're angled so steeply, it really matter as much in the short table edge deployment. You're basically just relying on these two ruins to protect you. And that's that. Let's move on to the last one. And this is one that we have. Oops, this is not the right button. This is one that we have shown off on the stream before. But it is changed a little bit. We're calling this one High Road. And this is the Tau map. Tsung and I played a game on this a couple weeks ago that is still available on the YouTube channel, so you can go check that out. And we talk a lot about sort of the ideas behind this map design and what we're trying to do with it. I have gotten some feedback that these so first off, these craters, unfortunately right now, it doesn't look like load for anyone else. They load in, the model loads in, but they are untextured. I'm not sure why that is, and it looks like we'll have to completely replace those with something different, which is unfortunate, but I had hoped it was a known issue before, and I had hoped I fixed it with some recoloring, but it didn't end up sticking. Michael McDonald, with the huge amount of scenery pieces available on TTS, how easy would it be for people to use your maps as a base to create custom maps for playing friendly games? I mean, it's not that hard. It's pretty simple. You can unlock a lot of these assets. Most of them are combined assets, so you can pull them apart, or you can use them all together as one big piece. And you can maneuver things around however you want. That's one of the beauties of TTS, is it's very highly customizable, and you'd be able to fiddle around with them however you want. I do hope that these maps are, because they're so thematic, and because we tried to sort of increase the visual aesthetic of the game as much as possible. I do hope that they are sort of casual game friendly as well, and not just sort of ITC. But one thing that we're trying to do is create new dynamics rather than just the ITC ruins play that we play in ITC, and that is something that I think these maps do pretty well. But this one, even more so than Black Glass, was aimed towards putting a big, huge avenue through the center of the table where line of sight was blocked, but create some tight terrain around the edges of the table, obviously. So one thing that you can do is a gunline army can, and in Sung and Guy's game, definitely demonstrated this. I kind of had a range superiority because I think I had a double exocrines with a Maliceptor protecting them. And I was able to dominate the center of the table, but that was because we were on a search and destroy terrain, or setup, which this map was originally not designed for. So this map was designed around Vanguard Strike, because you have these enormous barrier walls protecting almost your entire deployment zone in Vanguard Strike. And you can really hunker down inside those areas, and it's the same for short table edge deployments as well. So this is also a short table edge friendly map, but one thing you have to keep in mind is that you basically have this building here and you have this ruin, but you have nothing in the center. So one thing that could happen is if you are playing, Hammer and Anvil, and this is your deployment zone, you can set up on one side or another, but if you try to take the center of the table, it could end poorly for you. The hope was that a gun line could dominate this middle section, but they'd have to worry about units coming in the ruins on the sides and really mussing them up. Just like finite gates, we've added these ruins in the corner here to add line of sight blocking for very large models, especially, you know, knights and titans and things like that, as well as you can hide artillery back there to some extent on a long table edge deployment, or a short table edge deployment, excuse me. And then these buildings, these are obstructions again, so these will block movement across them, which makes things a little bit tougher if you are trying to engage a gun line that's hiding behind them. But that said, they don't block quite as much line of sight as any of the other obstructions in the game. We've counted the landing pads on the corners here as craters as well. I'm not sure if they will be that relevant, but they looked cool, so we added them anyway. And the Barracuda in the center is actually a ruin. So you can hide between 5 and 10 infantry pretty comfortably behind this thing. It was the intention. So the hope is that forward operators like scouts or nurglings or something like that will be able to take a center objective, so that it's not completely open in the middle, but it is very dangerous to go into the center effectively. So this one is probably the most gunline centric, but if you watch Sung and I's game, I'm actually, beyond just being able to take control of the middle, I'm actually able to very reliably send melee infantry around the flanks because they are protected by these huge barriers. So unless, you know, the one player moves into these ruins wholesale, you're going to be able to potentially get charges through them, and you're going to be able to move up the table pretty easily without being shot at. So I think it creates an entirely new sort of play pattern of play, because basically the line of sight blocking elements moved from the center, as they would be in ITC ruins, to these kind of center edges, I guess. But again, this is one where we'll have to fix the issue with the craters, and that will happen at some point as soon as I can find a reasonable asset to replace them with. Some people also complained of having issues with the particle effects on this map, but it seems very inconsistent. That might be a hardware issue. I'm not 100% sure. Seems like some people can load them just fine, and some people have trouble. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Some people also complained about the lighting effects on this map. I think that it is... Let's spawn a sun in here. One thing that we did during testing was we played it with a sunlight mod, and I think once you remove the sunlight mod, it actually resets the lighting on the map, so it makes it very dark. But if you play with the sunlight mod, the lighting effects are actually like super not very intense at all. So that might be something that we just incorporate into the map as well, that you can turn on and off if you want. But hopefully that will sort of assuage that issue. If you just turn off that night style lighting. But I think one of the interesting things about especially this map, but all of the maps, is that you can play on different lighting with different lighting settings, and it'll sort of change the experience. I think the Necron one the least of that. I think it looks a lot worse if you put a lot of lighting into it, just because the matte black kind of doesn't look great in bright lights. But Black Glass and High Road for sure both look pretty good in bright lights, and definitely kind of fits the desert aesthetic that the Tau have going for them as well. So that is those are the three maps that are now available right now over in the Discord on the public Test Realm channel. Shuma in the chat says he likes it with the sun, so there you go. You heard it here first. Shuma is a sunny boy. Those are available for download right now, like I said, in the public Test Realm channel, so go to the Discord and check that out. There's a link to the Discord in the description down below. I believe that at the very least we'll have one more map available within the next week or so for people to give feedback on. Once we are at a point where we're happy with these maps, what we'll probably end up doing is having maps determined like a mission for each round of a pod. So if you're in pods, we'll play with a random map every round. And some of these maps may need to be altered a little bit in order to make them a little bit more balanced for different deployment zones. Because again, they were designed with the idea that you would be able to choose your deployment zone effectively, or have more control over the choice of a deployment zone. So you would be sort of trying to force through a deployment zone if you got a particular map type. But we may we might rebalance them and then just move them to playing with random maps, at least until the launch of Ninth, and then we will definitely have a new map system for Ninth. I know the Pro Tabletop team, who just announced their World Championship series, and I are both going to be probably working together to build a new map base and a new catalog of maps for competitive play in Ninth Edition. So that's what's going on there. Everybody in the chat right now, remember to tune in to AOWPI around in about 3 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes or so. And that will be, I'll be playing my Deathwatch again, Deathwatch and Mixed Astartes with a billion Smash Captains. We're gonna go smashing. I'm gonna be playing those against some Adeptus Mechanicus from Pod 17, and then also tune back into this channel at 1900 EST. So it's about 7 p.m. So in about 7 hours, and Sung Soo and I will be playing the finals for Pod 7. That'll be Salamanders versus Tyranids, and that'll be sick. Luke McCarthy, 10 out of 10 map skills, 0 out of 10 skull roads. Maybe the last map will have a skull road in it, Luke, just for you. Shuma in the chat, at least we'll have space to put our drinks. Yeah, that'll be good. One of the interesting things will be resizing the map base for 9th edition if it turns out that we end up moving wholesale to 60 by 44 inches. I think because LVO will use it, I think we will. And it's not, honestly, it's not that big a deal to just tape off your mats, people. Like, it's so easy. You can get 2-inch duct tape. You just tape the edge. It's fine. But so we'll probably move to the smaller map size, and like I said, I imagine that at least for the first couple months until we can suss out how the meta looks in 9th edition, we will probably be building a map for each scenario, and that will be cool as well because we can theme them to the different scenarios. It looks like some of them have energy siphons and generators and things like that you'll have to interact with, and being able to model those in TTS is gonna like super duper make it sick. So that's something that we'll do. We'll have a lot more map creation content on AOWPI, so definitely go check out that Twitch channel and follow it there for more stuff. And we should have some more announcements on our Patreon, which will have a lot of tutorial content on that pretty soon. So that's going to be it for me for this stream. Thanks everybody for watching, and have a good one. And I hope to see you on AOWPI in about 2.5 hours. So see you there.